Quick question. How close is too close when it comes to family? Sharing toys with your sibling? Sure. Borrowing your cousin's clothes? Well, to be honest, most of us have already done this one. How about marrying your uncle? Now that's where we should draw a line, right? But apparently the Habsburgs of Spain didn't get that memo. You see, the Habsburgs ruled Spain for nearly 200 years, and they were all about keeping it in the family. And by that, I mean they treated their family tree like a matrimonial site. Their motto was quite simple. Why go outside when you can swim in your own gene pool? Cousins? Fair game. Uncles? Even better. The result? A family tree that looked less like a tree and more like a pretzel. These guys were the real OGs. They didn't just flirt with inbreeding, they cannonballed into the deep end. Their big idea? Preserve the wealth and power. The reality? They ended up preserving genetic disorders instead. And then comes the Charles II of Spain, the final boss of this game called inbreeding in Habsburgs. Born with enough genetic issues to make a biologist cry. Now, the Habsburg family wasn't just any royal dynasty. They were the royal dynasty. They ruled the Holy Roman Empire for over 350 years, Spain for nearly 200 years, and held thrones across Europe from Hungary to Portugal. These guys weren't just influential, they were practically the overlords of European royalty. And to maintain all that power, they decided to keep things in the family, quite literally. The Habsburg playbook included unions like Philip II of Spain marrying his niece Anna of Austria, or Charles II's own parents, Philip IV of Spain and Mariana of Austria, who, by the way, were uncle and niece. And it wasn't just one-off marriages. They were repeatedly marrying close relatives over generations. By the time Charles II came along in 1661, the Habsburgs' family tree wasn't branching out. It was folding in on itself, and the effects were, let's just say, visible. Ever heard of the Habsburg jaw? Imagine a chin so massive it looked like it was trying to escape the rest of your face. Charles didn't just inherit this feature, he perfected it. His lower jaw jutted out so far that his teeth didn't align, making chewing nearly impossible. But the jaw was just the beginning of his problems. Charles was born into what can only be described as a genetic nightmare. His inbreeding coefficient, a fancy way of measuring how related your parents are, was 0.254. To put that in perspective, that's about the same as parent-child or sibling-sibling relationship. You got it where I'm going with this one, right? So yeah, the Habsburgs were really committed to this whole family bonding thing. The result? Charles couldn't walk until he was 4, couldn't talk until he was 8, and needed 14 wet nurses just to keep him alive as a baby. His tongue was so oversized that he couldn't chew properly and often just swallowed his food whole like a chameleon, only to vomit it back up later. He suffered from epilepsy, rickets, hydrocephalus, that's a polite way of saying your skull has less brain and more fluid, and a laundry list of infections. Honestly, it's a miracle he even made it to adulthood. But the Habsburgs weren't about to blame inbreeding for all this. Instead, they decided Charles must be cursed. Yup, Charles's doctors thought the best way to cure him was to sprinkle holy water and yell at him. When that didn't work, they got creative. They made the poor guy drink powdered saint's bones mixed into his hot chocolate. Maybe I added the hot chocolate part, but the point is, in 17th century medical breakthrough was nothing but turning your king's breakfast into a graveyard smoothie. And if you thought that was weird, wait, there's more. Charles's mom, Mariana, was so desperate to fix him that she had his father's corpse dug up and placed in Charles's bedroom. Why? Because apparently nothing inspires good health like sleeping next to your dad's skeleton. Despite his endless health issues, Charles still had an empire to look after. Well, sort of. Most of the actual ruling was done by his mom and a rotating cast of advisors, because Charles wasn't exactly equipped to handle the job. Foreign ambassadors described him as shy but generous, a decent guy trapped in a body that just couldn't keep up. He spent much of his time hunting, which was probably one of the few things he could physically manage. But there was one job Charles absolutely had to do: produce an heir. You'd think his family would have realized that relying on this guy for the future of their dynasty wasn't the best idea, but no, they doubled down. Charles was married not once, but twice in desperate attempts to secure the next generation of Habsburgs. His first wife, Marie-Louise d'Orléans, was beautiful, young, and as far as history can tell, absolutely miserable. She confided to friends that Charles's, let's call it physical condition, made having children more of a fantasy than a reality. After years of bizarre fertility treatments and a sugar addiction so intense, the palace kitchens went through 32 pounds of sugar a day just for her snacks. Marie-Louise died at 26. The official cause was appendicitis, but back then, everyone just blamed her for not producing an heir. Charles's second wife, Maria Anna of Neuburg, came from a family famous for their fertility. If anyone could save the Habsburg line, it was her, but nope. Charles's body just wasn't cooperating. His autopsy later revealed that his one remaining testicle was atrophied. Maria Anna, desperate to prove herself, kept claiming she was pregnant when she wasn't. She even insisted on more exorcisms, believing demons were preventing her from conceiving. By the time Charles died in 1700, at just 38 years old, the Habsburg line in Spain was officially over. His body was in such bad shape that his autopsy read like something out of a horror movie. No blood, a heart the size of a peppercorn, intestines rotten and gangrenous, and a head full of fluid, and not to forget that single coal-black testicle. Yeah, not exactly the stuff of dynastic survival. But Charles's death didn't just end the Habsburg dynasty, it also sparked a war. With no heir to take the throne, Europe went into full meltdown mode. The two main contenders were Philip of Anjou, grandson of France's Louis XIV, and Archduke Charles of Austria. What followed was the War of the Spanish Succession, a 13-year conflict involving practically every major European power. Over 1 million people died, all because one family couldn't stop marrying their relatives. In the end, Philip of Anjou won the throne, becoming Philip V of Spain, and the Bourbon dynasty took over. Ironically, the Bourbons still rule Spain to this day, so, in a way, Charles's tragic life paved the way for modern Spain. So, what's the moral of this story? Simple. Maybe don't marry your uncle, or your cousin, or anyone in your immediate gene pool. Because history might not repeat itself, but it sure will leave your descendants without nuts. Thanks for watching. Throw that single nut or whatever you've got lying around at that subscribe button. I don't care how, just make sure it gets hit and don't forget to slap that like button if you enjoyed the video. I'm aiming for at least 10 likes. See you in the next one.